Today I'm going to talk about the pornified life. Those who are friends of pornography say that there is no research that says pornography causes damage. It's a lie. Today I'm going to try to review some of the research that shows the damage. But before I start, let me say there is no research that I know of that says pornography produces any kind of good outcomes. But there are dozens and dozens of studies that show the negative outcomes. I'm a psychotherapist, and psychologists call pornography the new crack cocaine, with an equal amount of damage produced by the old crack cocaine. One of the things that is produced in damage is what psychotherapists call permission-giving beliefs. These are beliefs that say what I am doing is normal, that everyone is doing it, it doesn't hurt anyone, and I don't need to stop doing it. Pornography also... Is there a question here?
A bit slower, please.
A bit slower.
Yes.
I'm Italian, I talk fast. I'll try. Pornography produces miseducation about sexuality. Some of the lies about sexuality that it produces are that sex is not about intimacy, it's not about caring, it's not about love, it's not about respect, it's not about marriage, and amazingly, sex appears to not be about having children, according to pornography. According to pornography, sex is just recreation. You don't need to know your partner. Sex with strangers is purported to be the best and most intense kind of sex, despite the fact that research says the opposite. According to pornography, sex has no negatives. No negatives like sexually transmitted diseases, no negatives like unwanted pregnancies, no psychological or moral impacts either. It's all a lie. According to pornography, female sexuality doesn't even match reality. The things that women enjoy in pornography, real women do not enjoy. In pornography, women are sexually insatiable and indiscriminate. They will have sex with anyone, anytime. And in pornography, men and male sexuality is viciously narcissistic, predatory, and out of control. It is a lie. Men are not naturally that way. You have to teach them, and pornography is their teacher. Internet pornography tends to be designer sex. You keep clicking, click, 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 until you find the idealized image or the preferred image of the moment. Expecting perfect and rearrangeable, that is, clickable body parts and body types is unrealistic and leads to dissatisfaction with real relationships. Real women are not clickable. Pornography includes performers who never say no and never reject sexual advances. This can lead to increases in unrealistic expectations about others, increase the frustration with others who do say no, and reduce the awareness and the skill of noticing unwillingness in your partner. Pornography is a one-way street. It focuses only on your own pleasure. There is no need, according to pornography, to consider the other's needs or their feelings, because sex is adversarial. It's contest. And sex is a product that you buy. Once sex is something that you buy, once a woman's body is something that you buy, if you can buy it, you can steal it. Stealing it is a code word for rape. A certain amount of internet pornography is pathological. It involves violence, it involves animals, it involves children, it involves rape. One of the impacts of pornography is the way people begin to think, and it changes their thinking. So the first area I'm going to look at is, what do pornified men think? Every statement on these slides are findings from research. The research that the friends of pornographers say don't exist, here are the findings. Women enjoy rape, according to the research, that men who use pornography believe this. They believe she got what she wanted when she was raped. That women make false accusations of rape. That they're more accepting of the rape myth. And that rapists deserve very little time in prison. Men who look at pornography have more sexually callous beliefs. They have an adversarial belief about sex. They increase their estimates of how many people are having sex in groups, sex with animals, and sex with violence. When they start to think other people are doing it, they're more likely to do it themselves. They are more accepting of violence against women. They use more sexual terms to describe women. They see women as sex objects. They have reduced support for the women's liberation movement. They rate their partners as less attractive. They are less satisfied with their partner's sexual performance. They have a greater desire for sex without emotional involvement. They have a greater acceptance of sex outside of marriage for married individuals. If you ask men who use pornography, they will say they should not be expected to be faithful when they are married. They have a greater acceptance of sex before marriage. They are less child-centered during marriage, and they are less desiring of female children. They are more willing to have sex with 13 and 14-year-olds. They are more sexually attracted to children, and they are less likely to think that pornography needs to be restricted from children. Those were all beliefs. What about their behaviors? They use more alcohol. They engage in more binge drinking. They have more sex partners. And we know that increased sex partners is the highest correlation with HIV. They are less attracted to their partners. They're less interested in actual sex with their actual partners. And they try to get their partners to act out scenes from pornographic films. They are more likely not just to think they should have affairs when they're married, but to actually have affairs when they're married. Nearly 2/3 of the attorneys at a 2003 meeting of the American Academy of Matrimonial Lawyers had witnessed a sudden increase in divorces related to the internet. 58% were the result of the spouse looking at excessive amounts of internet pornography. The more pornography they use, the more willing they're to engage in unusual sex practices, such as sadomasochistic sex, that is, sex including violence. They are more likely to go to prostitutes. In my own research, I found that 25% of 19 to 21-year-old males who use pornography had either already gone to a prostitute or planned to go to a prostitute in the future. More prostitution use was connected to more pornography use. More prostitution use was also connected to engaging in non-consensual sex. Men who go to strip clubs are more likely to engage in non-consensual sex than those who don't go to strip clubs. This fact that prostitution, strip clubs, and pornography are connected with non-consensual sex means that all of this is a seamless continuum. The factors that have been identified with sexual violence in research are hostility toward women, sex that's casual, non-intimate, recreational, and adversarial, and the use of pornography. All of those factors are actually affected by pornography. Men who have been exposed to sexually violent pornography are more likely to use sexually violent images to arouse themselves. and they are more likely to sexually harass women. More likely to engage in date rape, stranger rape, marital rape. Verbally coerce sex, physically coerce sex, use drugs and alcohol to coerce sex. Engage in behavioral aggression, and if they are more likely to sexually abuse those partners if they have battered the partner. We find that the greater use of pornography media among juvenile sex offenders who are exposed to pornography starting at the age of 7.5 years, more use among adult sex offenders, child molesters, and incest offenders. The earlier a male child is exposed to pornography, the more likely they are to engage in non-consensual sex. In fact, the diagnosis of pedophilia, that is, sexually arousal by children, is more often found in those who use child pornography than even in those who have raped a child. Men who use child pornography later admit that in fact they have sexually abused children as well. So the use of child pornography is connected to child abuse. But lest you think only men are damaged by pornography, let's look at the damage to women. Women who use pornography are also more likely to accept the rape myth and are more likely to have sexual fantasies that involve rape. Women who use pornography are also likely to think that rapists deserve little time in jail. More likely to reduce their support for women's liberation. Feel more negative about their own bodies. Think that their partners feel negative about their own bodies and are less likely to be involved in sex. The more pornography a young adult female uses, the more likely she is to be a victim of non-consensual sex. Lest you think it's just men and women, let's talk about children being exposed to pornography. Children who've been exposed to sexual images are more likely to engage in oral sex, anal sex, and are more likely to have had sexual intercourse. More likely to have negative attitudes toward using a condom, have not used any contraception during their last intercourse, have not used contraception in the last 6 months. They're earlier to initiate sex. These children have more sex partners. They've had more than one sex partner in the last 3 months, and they are likely to have sex more frequently. These children are more likely to test positive for chlamydia, a sexually transmitted disease. They are more likely to have used alcohol or other substances during sexual intercourse. These children have higher permissiveness scores when it involves sex and less progressive gender roles. These children say they have a strong desire to conceive, and the children are more likely to become pregnant. Have we heard anything we want for our children in these kinds of findings? These children are more likely to engage in sexual harassment, and the children are more likely to engage in non-consensual sex. What about the performers? These performers are more likely to be abuse survivors and have serious psychiatric disorders like depression, substance abuse, and borderline personality disorder. I'm going to skip this. This is too much detail here. The women who are performers in the sex industry have about a 25% chance of making a marriage that will last as long as 3 years. I'm going to skip this one too. There are prostitution myths that are spread in pornography. One that it's a victimless crime, one that these are consenting adults, that it's a job just like any others, and that the women in prostitution do it because they like sex. These images that I'm showing you are the pictures taken of one woman, her first photographed on her first arrest for prostitution. and the subsequent photographs taken of her in a 2-year period as she was continuously arrested for being a prostitute. So the first photograph and the last one are within 2 years. Does this look like a victimless crime? Another woman, less than 2 years from her first arrest for prostitution, 2 years later, an arrest for prostitution. This young woman, her first is just 1 year later, her last photograph. She was 18 years old in the first photograph. She's still 18 years old in the last photograph. Does this look like a victimless crime? In those countries that have legalized prostitution, what you have is an increase in child prostitution. We've seen that in Germany. When it legalized, there were about 7,000 child prostitutes. 2 years later, there were 15,000 child prostitutes. Most of those were sex trafficked in from Africa. The Swedish model has tried to focus on the demand end. The sexual exploitation industry is an equal opportunity toxin. It hurts men, it hurts women, it hurts children. It hurts the performers and the users. Not one piece of research shows a positive outcome. Roger Scruton at Oxford University described the damage of this, what looked like risk-free sexuality, actually produced a tremendous damage, and that is the risk of the loss of love in a world where only love brings happiness. Once you know the truth about pornography and what it causes, it's my belief that if you stand silent about it, that you are complicit with it. So I try to tell the pornographers that they will never have the comfort of my silence again. And I hope the same is true for you. Thank you.